Well, hello everybody. Look, these are very complex times, and that's what we want to examine in the next hour and a quarter. The quality of leadership and what leadership is going to have to face. The next decade, a decade of course is 10. It could be 10 days, 10 weeks, 10 months, not just 10 years. That's the speed of change that we're going to be looking at. And notice it's highly interactive. That means you as well. Please use your app. I've got the moderator's tool here, which means I can look at what you're saying, what you're thinking, and come to you to contribute as well. Anyone want to come in at this moment? It shows that the unexpected literally is the unexpected. I'd like brief thoughts. Remember, if we'd been meeting 3 months ago, none of us would have been predicting Russia going into Syria. And none of us probably would have been warning of the migration crisis. It's that scale of challenges. Please, microphone here.
The really unexpected but really desirable would be to have a global carbon tax today rather than tomorrow.
That's achievable in December, and it may be moving in that direction. So it's not unexpected. Is it unthinkable? Right. But let me just ask you, Ishii-san, can I just ask you, given the tensions between China and Japan at the moment, what is the unthinkable there we need to be thinking about here?
We are all expected to live happily and prosperously together. I think that's expected.
The diplomat speaks. Thank you very much indeed. Right, 2 more interventions. And again, I've got there's a lady there. I will come to anyone else in a moment on many of these issues. But I need to go to Prince next, because I need to understand, picking up on what Elliot said, about the ability of the current generation of leaders, however you want to define them, wherever they are in the world, whether corporate or government, to accept that the nature of leadership is changing in this digital space particularly. And with your experience in Ghana, I mean, there is an argument which says that the conformity which gets people to the top disqualifies them from actually understanding the nature of change that's needed. I think that's really important. All 4 of them were nodding at the moment, and I think there are probably a lot of nodding going on here. Felicitas, what's your understanding of that? You raise a really important point, risk aversion, unexpected, unthinkables. There are those who say very emphatically that inside organizations, risk aversion means they are not being identified, the potential or the possibilities, even if they don't happen. What's your joint experience, Elliot? Should I just check, is there anyone in this room who's a leader who doesn't feel they're doing their job very well, would like to talk about it very publicly? That's the problem. That's the problem. It's not an easy thing to talk about. All right. I'd say this is profoundly important. This is the big gap on conformity versus reality. And you better just tell us how easy it is and what the cost is for buying a PV cell, for generating electricity in your back garden when you've only got 2 hours of electricity a day. Dan, behind the screen, can you go back one message? Because there's one message which was up there. There it is. The institutions itself cannot attract the new expertise, reallocate resources, and build consensus quickly enough to respond effectively. And you just said cybersecurity threats are an example of this. Do you want to just quickly add to this? Because that seems to be fundamental to much of what we're discussing, the ability of organizations and institutions to understand the challenge and react in a timely way. Can we get the microphone there, please?
So I work for the State Department in the U.S. I work in the Bureau of Energy Resources because 4 years ago, Secretary Clinton thought, there is a foreign policy and energy nexus. It took 2 years since she wanted that to actually create people and an office within the State Department to work on that. And we went from 5 people to 70 in 4 years. But that takes time, and these threats and crises are happening in the meantime, and we have the people and we have the resources, but how do you connect those dots?
There is a voice of frustration there, and you're on the inside, and I was thinking, should I come to someone from the State Department or someone who's working for an institution? Because you've highlighted something at the center of what we're talking about, the speed at which decisions are needed, but the bureaucratic obstructions and the politics as well. Can you see institutions like, say, the State Department really changing, given the imperative for timely reaction?
I think it's possible.
All right. Of course, there is an argument that a crisis becomes a crisis only because it hasn't been addressed in advance, because it wasn't palatable to address it as the first signs were emerging. Let me just give you 3 or 4 comments from the floor, from Anne Notsukio. We can be ready for the unthinkable by creating equal platforms for opportunities for everyone, despite age, gender, or race. From Juan Andrés Ordonez Gomez, inclusion of culture, as a category of analysis in the Atlantic dialogues in the future. And so we've also got one, I think it was up there, so you may have read it, from Veronique, about you can't entrepreneur around bad leadership. We can't entrepreneur around bad policy and neglect fundamental problems hampering African countries. And the question, what do you make of those comments? Let me, if I may, just go to a number of other people. There are a lot of hands going up. Let me go to a lot of people in the audience, because it is about a conversation. First you, and then the lady here. How many other people want to intervene at the moment? About 10. Okay, I'm coming to you in a moment. You've got the microphone first. But encouragement to fail, how do you embed that in a system to get positives out of all of this?
It is a matter of trust.
Thank you. We have about 12 minutes to run, so I'm going to have to continue to be pretty brutal. Let me give you another couple of messages. This from Enrico Escobar. Certainly in my work, lack of history is seen as a real problem for the next generation of leaders. Right, two more questions and points, and then I'll ask you to pick up on whether we've addressed many of the concerns that the 40 of you have been expressing over the last 3 days, please. Thank you very much indeed. Right, I'm going to close the floor and ask the panel to respond to this. I was asked, certainly before we came onto the platform, that can you be as positive as possible? And I'd like to say, from my perspective, that what we have done is we've been positive because we've raised very openly a lot of challenges which require being addressed. And it's a question of being realistic as opposed to negative. Sarah, what's your view of where we've got to? Do you think this reflects a significant support for your concerns about where leadership is going as it addresses the unexpected? So perhaps we've rocked a little bit, but in, I think, a very positive way this afternoon, just airing, and still no one has yet put their hand up and said that they could be better as a leader to incorporate, but maybe that's for the next meeting of the Atlantic Dialogues or the German Marshall Fund. Can I thank you all for your contributions, for a very, very energetic and thanks to the next generation who probably are going to take us all over next year, so that's great. Can I thank you all, 4 of you, for representing the 40, and we're delighted